Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 10th episode of Real Talk with Sudhanya. And I'm your host, Sudhanya. Today, my guest is me. Surprise, surprise. And I'm being interviewed by my very first guest, Katharina Schmidt. She's an executive leadership coach and part of the Forbes Coach Council and has this infectious, beautiful energy. It was an honor to share my purpose with her and attend to her curiosity. I hope if you are curious, do check it out and have fun.
I remember one day I was like, I want to understand more about why she is bringing real talk into the world and what she wants with it. And it has been so therapeutic and enlightening and enriching and inspiring to to do real talk with you in the
Yeah.
position of like almost receiving it, that I thought it would be good to give that back to her.
Oh, thank you so much.
So let's start with you telling us a little bit more about yourself. Just the important pieces
Mm.
of who is Sudhanya.
Well, there is so much. That itself is a very deep question. Still finding myself, but on the practical side, I am a tech consultant working in data for the last 15 years, born and brought up in India and in the east of India in Bengal, and now living in the Netherlands for the last 8 years. Um, yeah, so working in data analytics and as you can see, I'm doing a podcast and also I give workshops and I'm very passionate about the topic of emotional intelligence, specifically because I feel like I think we mentioned in our podcast that emotion is data, and that really intrigued me. Many years back, through my own journey, of course. I had my own set of traumas in the childhood, and which I share very often, and I'm very open to share them always, because that brings so much of learning about what life is about. And that's something I'm very, very passionate about to discover within me and also share what I learn. I am basically, in one word, if I had to share my core value, it's curiosity. Very curious to learn and expand and grow.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, if you look at your story and just the few pieces of data
Mm-hmm.
that you shared with us,
Mm-hmm.
there is a lot of curiosity. I would say there's diversity. I feel like, wow, this is a very diverse puzzle, and you need curiosity to
Yes.
create such a diverse puzzle, and the willingness to stretch your boundaries or go over your boundaries and like I mean,
Yeah.
India, Netherlands, wow,
And
that in itself. Go.
yeah. And also in between India and Netherlands, also I got a chance to, because I work in tech and data and hello Indian, we are dominating the tech industry right now. I also got a chance to live literally in many other countries. So I lived 1 year in Singapore, which was a very good exposure to the Southeast culture in Asia, but also I lived 1 year in Ghana in Africa and different parts of the world in between this whole, like before I came to Netherlands, I was living this digital nomadic life basically, and because I love traveling and learning culture, that's one of my other passions, to learn and consume as what what's this beautiful world about. And
Yeah.
that made me also realize that there is much more to life than, what the society tells us that, okay, you need to have this hi-fi, accolades of career or have, your romantic pursuits, especially for females, romantic pursuits or career. Like these are very um very important. And I realized that, yeah, they are important, but we are multidimensional beings. So exploring our, um, inner world in all those other dimensions opened a next level world for me. And I love to play in that world.
Oh, wow. There's so much to discover in that multi-dimensional beings. Yeah. And I think you embody that. So, one of the dimensions of what you bring into the world is real talk with Sudhanya.
Hmm.
Tell us a little bit more about how that started and what
Mm,
you intend to bring in the world with it.
yeah. Um, well, it started with my discovery that I loved, communicating, presenting, sharing ideas at work. Uh, I started learning that, okay, I love giving presentation, but the limitation was only like tech and analytical, which I love. Still, I love it, but it was always limited, and that made me feel limited. And I wanted to explore that, how it is to talk about other stuff, like, outside technology, outside about being human, about, you know, other dimensions of life, for example, spirituality, for example, um, the different other dimensions of life. There can be many. And that what made me bit like, okay, what's the how can I do that? And even if I want to, even at work also, to be frank, I felt, uh being a female, being from, brown female also, I felt like how much ever I work, how much hard I work, there is a glass ceiling. And I never felt that, okay, I can do justice to exploring my potential there, to be frank. And I really, being curious person, want to really explore those potential, explore, and, you know, push those limiting beliefs that I have, that, hey, because I am an engineer, I can't speak about, non-tech topics. Or I can't talk about leadership because I come from a certain background. Oh, yeah, I don't have any leadership background, hence I can't do that. And that really challenged me to pick up public speaking outside tech. And also, I write poetry and love to explore, the inner cruising through poetry, through words, through transcendental, um, imagination downloads. And I wanted to mix them all. And I was, last year somewhere, I felt this nudge that, okay, there are some puzzles which I can see that, okay, these might be some of the skills I can offer to the world for a bigger purpose. Okay, speaking, bit of courage, bit of exploring non-tech sides. What does the world need? Bit of feminine leadership, breaking the glass ceiling. And then I discovered that, okay, it all means authenticity, being and embracing authenticity. And that was shit scary. I was thinking, oh my God, what will my tech community think about me if I tell that, oh, I talk about emotional intelligence? And it really challenged me, really challenged me. And being typical me, when I see a challenge, like, okay, challenge accepted. I am going to, since I want to inspire people to be authentic, the first challenge is you should be authentic. So then, yeah, I'm like, okay. And hence I started this whole journey of even thinking about this podcast. And I also spent a lot of time that why do I want to do it? Of course, for inspiration, but what kind of people would I like to explore, even with? Whom do I want to invite was also a real question to me. And I had, in the beginning, I had a certain intention that, okay, I would like to invite my favorite people, and you were my first one. And, from whom I get a lot of energy, inspiration. And slowly I realized that it's quite tough to be vulnerable, balanced, and, um, you know, there was this whole habit of being too nice rather than really hitting to the point. Um, and I realized that, okay, I want to really have even more authentic conversation with people who want to raise the frequency of the earth, raise and expand the consciousness of the world, who have a bigger purpose than themselves. And yeah, that's a ever going quest.
Wow. Raise the frequency of the earth and raise the bigger consciousness. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Um, yes. Uh, well, when we think about today's modern world, which I totally belong, and I am very proudly part of the intellectual community, of the tech world, of the corporate world. And as you know, it's very masculine, it's very controlled, it's very much driven by rational thinking, which I feel I realized, uh, which I take it in pride, and I really enjoy the intellectual conversations, and I really um, enjoy being very rational and logical. But I realized through doing the inner work, through exploring so many, being curious, that it's still a limited way of looking um, at humanity, at the world. And there is much more to learn beyond rational thinking if you really are open to other dimensions, like the topic of spirituality itself, like the topic of feminine energy itself, like the topic of emotion itself. These are topics which we still have so much of prejudice about. And I feel since we have ignored royally these topics for generations, um, everybody's suffering, just not females. The
Yeah.
patriarchy, the wars, everybody's suffering. And it's high time that we realize that why there is so much of, I don't know, the wars, the mental health issues, the burnouts, the great resignation, the quiet quitting. Why? Why there is only one way of being, and that is, being part of, you study, you have a job, you marry, buy a house, have a car, and, vacation. Is that the only way that can be celebrated? And that opened a lot of dimensions that, to honor and um, look into the sacredness of being human, to the higher self. And that can never be reached through rational thinking. That's what I realized. Cannot be.
Okay. I'm taking a breath here to take in the the beauty of your words and how you live
Mm.
being a multi-dimensional being, and you
Oh.
bring that into the world. And there is, I think, through that, when you talk, it's so interesting. On the one hand, there is the data and the logic,
Mhm.
and it's your first pursuit in life to manifest yourself was through the traditional path,
Right.
more transactional, and then apparently you discovered, and it was probably always present, that the poetry, transcendence, other dimensions. There
Mm.
is so many dimensions in what you say,
Mm.
and there through that, the way that I look at the world And I think
Mm,
most of us look at the world, there is polarity. I mean, data
mm,
and emotions,
mm,
logic and poetry.
mm.
There is so much that we find challenging to reconcile in
Right,
our thinking. Even you, like when you said, "Ooh, what's my tech community going to say about me when I do emotional intelligence workshops?"
right. Yeah, it is. Duality.
Tell us duality, polarity, friction,
Mm,
things that we can't easily combine. Like there
mm,
is research and science, and then there is transcendence and
mm,
spiritual dimensions
mm.
and stuff that we can't prove doesn't exist in one world. So tell us how you deal with those polarities. Also, when you come across them in your audience or in reactions to your real talk with people.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I had to prepare about this a lot, because I know that, first of all, to even before dealing with anybody who is challenging me, I had to deal with myself.
Yeah,
And the most important thing I learned is self-acceptance of duality,
yeah.
of dark and light, of logic,
Mm,
and the non-rational, being curious and being this whole, I don't know, voracious, um the having this voracious thirst for knowledge. I realized that still it's such an infinite topic. It's such an incomprehensible, ununderstandable topic. I can never quench that thirst. And that's the other extreme other side of it's a very logical, but yet I can't have certain logics about certain parts of life ever to be okay with that fact. And hence, I will meet people who will be completely opposing my thoughts, and people might also not might definitely dislike, especially in the
yeah,
tech community, might not, because that's the mainstream, that's most people how at least um perceive. And to be at peace with it, that not everybody is going to like me, and
yeah,
neither I am going to also, um but that's only just a point of view. That's not the person. The person is much more than that. And it's always about exploring yourself, about yeah, I also learned a lot about self confidence and self worth through this, because if you can accept that part of you which can never be understandable, you can always understand others.
yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. The self acceptance
yeah.
you talk about shines through in that. It's beautiful. Hey, if you what would be your wildest dream for real talk with Sudhanya?
Oh, wildest dream. um of course, to reach out every single person on earth and beyond, maybe. And also, but it's not about, again, me. I'm just a vessel. Again, I want to attract people who are, working so hard, just like you, to bring a difference, because it's the time. We are living in very interesting time. We need power, inspiration, feminine leadership, balance, all these things. And that requires a lot of courage. And if I could give, my 10 cents by giving that platform and bringing it to the mainstream and helping people, explore their awareness journey, expand our consciousness together, um, bring that actual difference. Maybe 10 years from now, we both can laugh about it, like, hey, we did a real talk and see what difference we created. That would be my, uh, yeah, real win. And yeah. that I could, live a purpose bigger than my own personal career and commitments and stuff like that. That's much more valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm breathing again. And you say we live in interesting times. I think we live in challenging times. If you look at
Very.
climate change and inequality and rising polarity and the pandemic, which is still like ebbing and flowing,
Mm,
and the higher levels of anxiety.
right.
What I really admire and what I get from you is hope and optimism. And so I wonder if we could, like, if you could share one thing that you do that helps you to choose hope and optimism as opposed to despair and anxiety and getting lost in the grandeur of the challenges of this
Yeah.
time. What do you do? How do you do that?
Very, I love that question, Katharina, because that's something I have been thinking a lot, and it's been a month. I have been even more introspective and, um, sitting in darkness because what you mentioned, we live in extremely challenging times, and we are seeing at the global scale, but I'm sure we are also experiencing in our own personal lives. And I am also confronted with that. Um, you know, and since I am in that, it's still a wound, but I learned to sit down and see and just observe the darkness. What is it trying to teach me? Tell me, what do you want to teach me? I want to learn. How can I bring lightness to the darkness? Because darkness is beautiful when we let it to expand our consciousness. Hence, I have a lot of honor and reverence for the times that we are going through, for all the painful, challenging, suffering times we are going through. Because if you really are still and watching it, we can learn so much and make ourselves so strong. We learn about ourselves. If we don't like something, we also learn what we like and what our values are, what our
Yeah,
a purpose is, what our goals are, what do we really stand for, and then are we acting with that? Once we realize it, are we taking aligned action? So you can learn so much about yourself and grow yourself. So these are also very interesting times for us individually to learn and grow. So it's the self knowledge part through darkness, but also taking aligned actions. And hence, I feel very much called upon personally to do this real talk because I think we are together doing a very uh, bigger thing and really
yeah,
feel passionate about, um, looking into the trauma head on and looking into the suffering. Like, teach us, what do you want to teach? Let those emotions of suffering uh, teach us what we need to learn and grow out of it.
yeah. I remember a story you once told me about your relationship with your mother, where you looked into the darkness as well, which helped you to deal
Yes.
with it.
Yes.
And I think our natural tendency is to want to push away the darkness or like numb ourselves, ignore it, not sit in it because it makes us afraid and uncertain, and
Run
our brains
away.
and our systems run away. Yeah.
Netflix,
And
chill,
yeah,
distraction,
all of that.
alcohol, addiction, retail
Screens,
therapy. Oh, you say it.
yes. Consumption, yes. Addiction. And what you just said is sit in it, introspect, be still, let it be,
Mhm.
notice as opposed to feel overwhelmed and want to get out of it.
Mm,
I think I
yeah,
think that's amazing.
yeah, yeah. I think there is a lot of beauty in it. For me, that is romanticism. Yeah.
Yeah, I also see that in your poems, in your poetry occasionally, the darkness
Yeah.
and the dance with the darkness, as opposed to the shutting out the darkness.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I feel it's in my way to honor it and to learn from it and be a stronger and a better person.
yeah, yeah. I also see it in the photographs that you sometimes connect to your poetry. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Hey,
Thank you.
is there something that you that we didn't touch upon? You said so much. I mean, what resonates with me is dimensions, diversity, discovery, and all of that with lots of compassionate curiosity that you bring into the world.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
raising the frequency of all of us and the earth, I think is such a beautiful purpose.
Thank you.
Is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you would like to tell your listeners or your watchers to raise the frequency of the earth and of this real talk with Sudhanya?
Uh, I think I touched upon everything. My only, I would say, message would be to um, just like I think everybody knows about how important it is to take care of our health and to always remember that there are at least three aspects of it. There are so many other aspects, but the physical, mental, and the emotional aspect of it. As much as
Yeah,
it's important to work out. It is important to ensure that you have, good mental hygienes as well as emotional hygienes as well. And sometimes letting go of that rational mind and just be can be therapeutic, and to give more and more importance to that through rituals, practices, watching this podcast, it can be very therapeutic. Yeah.
or creating this podcast. It's so interesting you bring
Yes.
up the mental, physical, and emotional. I also hear a spiritual dimension in everything you
Yes.
say. There is spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. It's interesting you say that. That's great. Thank you so much.
I think spiritual is the foundation, which
Yeah.
interestingly in today's world we don't even there is this dislike, not even dislike, disgust about it, which is yeah, funny. That's why it's challenging times.
Negligence. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Thank you so much for doing Real Talk with Sudhanya with me today.
Yeah, it's so fun, Katharina. You have been my first guest, and unfortunately we lost the video, but I'm happy to show your face this time. That was my real purpose.
Real talk, real purpose. I always enjoy connecting with you, and I think you have an amazing ability to put things into words. Which you use in your poetry.
Thank you.
There is this transcendence in what you say and how you say things and how you bring seemingly disconnected dimensions together and make us all multidimensional. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, compliment, and honor to be in this podcast with you once more. And we'll
Mm.
have many more. I know it. Thank you so much.